from the City of Columbus to our meeting this evening. We will have a presentation on the big TV screen. Mr. Celebrezzi will also be speaking. Tony, how many years do you have with the city? I know it's a number. 8. If his name sounds familiar, there was another Celebrezzi that worked for the government for a number of years, and that he happens to be related to. With that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Deputy Director of Building and Zoning Services, Tony Celebrezzi, and let's give him a round of applause a moment.
Good evening, everybody. One, thank you all for being here and letting me have this discussion with you all. This is a big project that the city has embarked upon. I've got a lot of information tonight. I hope I don't bore you too much with it, but I also want to make sure that we kind of get on the same page and then you all understand what we're doing and where we're going with it, because it affects everybody in this room. So I do have some slides. There's as entertaining as zoning can be, but I ended up, I'm terrible writing notes out for these things. I tend not to, but there was a lot that Bruce wanted me to make sure I cover. First off, can everybody hear me?
No.
All right. Sometimes I get rid of microphones, but in this case, I probably should keep it. So again, as I said, thank you all for giving me this opportunity to be here tonight. I will stay as long as people want to have Q&A. I'd like to introduce 2 staff support folks that are here. Cynthia Rickman, who is our Assistant Director, and then James Lewis in the back. He is actually directly associated with this, what's called Zone In project. He does a lot of communications. Cynthia and James, if you guys would start passing out my business cards, I would greatly appreciate it. So I brought 500 business cards for folks here. So you all have my email, my address, and my phone number. Don't be afraid to use it. Anybody that has ever run into me or that's worked with me in area commissions or civic groups know that I am all about making sure that you understand that we as your elected, I'm not elected, but as your government officials, you understand what we're doing. You may not like it sometimes, but I believe that you all should know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I'm a big transparency guy. I want folks to understand why we do what we do. That's what we are. So, you know, I did read a lot of the comments on social media and so forth, and I saw there's a lot of people that concerned, worried. I'd even go as far as to say, you know, scared about what this project is. And I'm not gonna discount those feelings because I appreciate knowing them, because you know where we live is probably the most important place in our hearts and in our families. And so whether you own a house, own an apartment, live in an apartment or a condo, that's the most important thing to you. And I'm the same way. I've got, you know, my wife and 2 kids. We've got our house, and I love my house. And you know, if somebody told me or insinuated that there was something going to happen, the city was going to do something that I couldn't live there or do what I'm doing, I'd be upset. So hopefully I can dispel some of that tonight. I'm not going to claim to be able to dispel everything. Excuse me. I had COVID 4 weeks. I'm still got the throat congestion a little bit, but that shouldn't impact me. So, you know, we're going to go through a lot of things tonight, but I want to put it out there that I did read and I did take to heart what a lot of folks were saying, because this is complicated stuff. Boring as hell too, but it's complicated and it's easy to not understand it. It took me, you know, I didn't know zoning when I started with building and zoning services 8 years ago. It took me a good year to understand things and the breadth of what it impacts and does for us. So right now, yep, you jumped to 2 already? That's 2, perfect. So, you know, why do we need to update our zoning code? This is a picture of the city of Columbus in 1952. 44 square miles. We are now at 222 square miles for a city. Big. You know, we've got this huge popularity with jobs coming here, which then means people are moving here. We're dealing with roughly 88 new bodies to Central Ohio every night, and we're continuing to grow. You keep hearing about all the fancy stuff, Intel and all that, but at the same time, we've got a lot of small businesses moving here, and a lot of people creating new businesses. And so we've got a lot of people moving here, and one of the challenges is that our zoning code, which the last time it was updated was 1952. What was big in 1952? The automobile. The zoning code that we have is auto-centric. Now down here, automobile, and you use automobiles to get around a lot. In a lot of other areas, especially the original area of Columbus, it's a lot different in walkable neighborhoods. In my neighborhood, I joke that I can stand between my house and my neighbor's house to the east or to the west and do this and touch both houses because I live in a very dense neighborhood. But that's not what the city wants to do for the far south, unless that's what somebody wants to do. You all have larger, more suburban setting with single-family homes on plots of land that you manage and enjoy. And so the zoning code is not being updated to force you to do anything different than what you're doing today. Okay? I'll get into more of that in a few minutes here. So, you know, who here has had their property tax go up this last year? I'm part of the club. So we know that part of that is caused by levies, but another part of that is caused by your house valuations. And the house valuation, even if you haven't moved out of there, I've been in my house 22 years. My wife and I don't plan on moving unless they take me out feet first. And like I said, we love our neighborhood, we like our house. But when everybody around you ends up selling and we have this huge glut of people coming in, I hate to say it's almost pure capitalism. We don't have the supply for everybody to live where they want to live. And so we end up with more people trying to fight for the same number of houses that are here. And unfortunately, over the years, the zoning code has been tweaked, but has never been caught up to building the number of buildings, number of houses, or residential units, sorry, jargon there, which I try to stay away from, but the number of units that we need to house everybody. And so that because of that drives housing prices up, which then all of us that have been living in our house for 10, 20, a lifetime, we gotta pay higher taxes because the valuations through the county auditor's office say, well, my house is worth X times 2, and I'm like, wait, I'm not moving, I'm not doing anything other than living there. And so it's really a challenge, for all of us to deal with these higher taxes because we've got a lot of people wanting to move here.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Gentrification. That's what it is called.
Gentrification?
Yeah, that's what it's called. He's right.
Well, gentrification is when people come in and upgrade the houses and then turn around and sell them for higher prices. Okay. All right, well, let me, I don't mind chatting about that at the end, during this. So, even if we haven't, even though there are investors coming in to do it, they're still paying higher prices because they know in the end they can sell that house or rent that house and make $1. If they couldn't do that, if there weren't so many people trying to get into the number of houses, the limited number of houses that we have, then they wouldn't be here. And so we can hate them, we can not like them, and that's fine. But in the end, they're still going to try to buy houses here, fix them up, or just flip them. And so the way to stabilize things is to put more units on the market. So let as I said, I am more than happy to have lots of conversations over this ongoing, but if I could at least get through what zone-in is, okay? Because we're not forcing developers in or out. We're not forcing people to move or not to move. There's a lot of slick advertisements out there and a lot of slick people trying to get people to sell them their houses for less. A lot of times it's because they end up owing taxes on back taxes because you can't afford pay the higher taxes. But let me move on from this because we're getting stuck here. So we can at least make sure we're getting on the same page. Yes, please. So before we dive into this slide, zoning, I want to make sure everybody understands what zoning is. Zoning is a management tool that the city uses to try to ensure that neighborhoods remain neighborhoods, that commercial areas remain commercial areas, that manufacturing is in a place that doesn't impact the neighborhoods as much. Now we've got the challenge in that many areas on the south side and the far south, which was part of Marion Township, were developed 100 years ago when the employees lived within half a mile, 3/4 of a mile of the shops or the manufacturing facilities that they lived in or that they worked at. My neighborhood was like that. We had AC Humco for 100 years on the banks of the river, and everybody in my neighborhood for 100 years walked down there to go to work, or Jeffrey Minot in Italian Village, or other areas like that. So we've got areas that are challenging, but the whole idea behind zoning is that you have a single family house or you have a condo that somebody can't come in and build some sort of manufacturing plant right next to you, or that you look down the street and all the houses are lined up the same distance from the road. That's all part of the zoning, that we don't allow you to put fences up certain distances from corners so that when people are pulling out of alleyways or streets, they can actually see around it, so when they pull out, somebody doesn't drive up and hit a division triangle. More jargon, correct. So zoning is really a management tool, trying to figure out, what can go where and how. So, but it does not tell you that you have to stop doing what you're doing right now and force you to do something different. If you have a single family home, you can continue to be a single family home. If you have a shop, you can continue to be a shop on whatever street you're on, and you can change it down the road. But the city cannot tell you you have a single family home. We need you to put an apartment building there. No, we don't have that authority through the zoning code. Okay, so we've got together here. The mayor came to my department and Department of Development and said, look, zoning code's messed up. You guys got to fix it in such a way that we can develop and build the units that we need to handle all these new people coming in. And also, when you go to build an addition on your house or build a garage or rebuild a garage, many of us have to go get variances because you're too close to the side property line. Because we have requirements for side property, for 4 feet on either side of your property, and all sorts of lot coverage and all this, again, jargony stuff. But anybody that's ever been through our variance process would rather get a root canal. And I love my zoning folks a lot. They do a great job. They've been very creative, but it's time consuming and it's expensive. And folks here may not know the attorney to go hire that knows the process, or the representative that knows the process and get it done without you. I certainly couldn't when I did my variance for my side yard. So we have, we need to figure out how to make the code more transparent. How can you read it and understand it? Right now, you can't understand it, and I can't either a lot of times. So when we got together, there's 4 of us that are leading this, 2 people from Department of Development, and myself and Festus Manley Spain from the Department of Building and Zoning Services. And when we sat down and started working through this, we were trying to figure out, all right, we got 222 square miles of city to deal with. And how do we rewrite that zoning code, which is hundreds of pages long? And, I joke, how do you eat an elephant? Somebody's gotta know this one. Exactly. And so that's what we started to realize that we needed to do. So we sat down and we thought, all right, obviously people are very much concerned with what would happen in their neighborhoods. And as we started surveying lots of the corridors in the city, we realized that what's called the main streets, your Parsons, your North High, your South High, your Broad Street, Fifth Avenue, those commercial corridors had a lot of capacity. They had a lot of two-story buildings in areas of vacant buildings. And so we settled on the main streets, on about 143 miles of Main Street throughout the city. And these are areas that we're working with CODA to improve transit, where we've got community plans support. Whoops, keep going, stay back. I'm jumping ahead here. I know I'm going slow, but I'm really trying to make sure I cover everything with folks. So anyhow, we're supported by community plans. That was one of the things we looked at. You got the Lincus corridors. And the other thing we realized is along these corridors, they're different. Parsons is not Bethel Road, nor is that Morse Road or 161 or West Fifth Avenue near where I live. So we had to figure out all of those places are all zones C4. They're all the same identical requirements, whether it's there or far west side, far west side. The height limitation on those corridors, you can jump to number 4. The height limitation along these corridors here in our city is 35 feet. That's how high my single family home is. I bet you it's how high your single family. We're the 14th largest city in the country, and our major corridors are limited to 35 feet. That's crazy. This is where we should be thriving, where we should have lots of people, where we should have lots of commercial activity, we should have lots of interaction. I saw a stat the other day. In 1952, Linden has the same number of structures, roughly, that they did in 1952. Their density is half. And that's the reason why they don't have the commercial activity that they want to see. A lot of us, the family unit has dropped with the number. I grew up in a household with 5 kids. I've only got 2 for an assortment of reasons. And I think if you think about it too, you'll find that a lot of folks, the households are smaller than they were 50, 60, 70 years ago. And with that comes less commercial activity because you don't have customers. So we started looking at, we looked at these, and again, we looked at the land use plans, and we looked at these parcels. These are only one parcel in from the corridors. We deliberately did not want to start to approach or talk to the neighborhoods because that's a huge process. This was a huge process, and we've been working on this for 2 years, actually 3 years, and then we did some presentations early on in the late part of COVID with a lot of the area commissioners. So we've got these corridors that we did. Where's it going? Fall down your job. But you gotta look before you jump there. So this is the parcel I know you all know. That's the big corridor, roughly 800 parcels along South High Street that we're looking at. Next slide. So, this is over in Franklin 10. So, but a lot of the things that we're looking for, or a lot of the challenges that we're having along these corridors, is we need more units, whether they're rental, condo, or small apartment buildings. And right now, our code makes it near impossible. This project took, from the zoning standpoint and working through the city projects, took over a year. And that's unacceptable. And we're working on, internally, we're doing our part to try to shorten all the different regulatory hoops that they have to go through. But we've got to make sure that when somebody puts something like this in, or they put a new house in, or a new business, that they're not going to cause flooding in their neighbors because now the rainwater doesn't have some place to go. That they've got enough sewer capacity in the area that when everybody goes to the bathroom halftime during the Super Bowl, that we don't blow out the sewer lines. So, we had to work through a lot of these different pieces of this puzzle. And the key to it, so, you can do that too, but I know some of the code officers up there, they're having challenges too. So one of the challenges that we have is that, again, we got that 35-foot height limit, but also with our current C4 designation, which is an original designation from 1928, which is an exclusionary zoning code. You can't have a residential on the first floor, but a lot of people want to live on the first floor. Just look at a lot of the developments that we're seeing. They want residential on the first floor, and so we had to figure out how to make the new code more permissive, in that we can have more uses there. Go ahead to the next slide. This is a coffee shop over there on Parsons and Deschler. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. When this building was built, the homeowners generally lived above the shop, and they ran the shop down below. And most of them a lot of people didn't have cars. This building takes up 95% of the parcel. So yet our zoning code says that for all the square footage, you have to have X number of parking spaces. In this case, I think they needed to have 10 parking spaces. There's no way they're getting 10 parking spaces. This obviously is in an older part of town. So they had to go through the variance process. The young lady that runs this, if I remember correctly, she had to go visit the area commission, had to deal with all the hoops and hurdles to get through this, just to have open a coffee shop here, in which, as you can see, the building's pre-existing. But in order to change that use and put this in, she had to go through a lot of hoops and take a lot of time. And it was unacceptable to us, and we started looking at it, obviously, to the mayor, since he told us, you gotta fix this. So we're we gotta try to figure out how we can have businesses thrive here and in all other areas of the city. Go ahead to the next slide. So we kind of ended up with five kind of statements. Part of it was to reduce the reliance on site-by-site negotiation. Every time we do a variance, which every year we do hundreds of variances, or rezonings, every time we do a variance, or there's one particular code or one particular zoning district that like a customized, it ends up becoming its own little zoning district. And you set out a set of rules, and then we go about every year hundreds of times figuring out how to make exceptions to it. Right now, and I don't have the slide in here, which I wish I did, we have tens of thousands of variances throughout the entire city. We might as well not have a zoning code if that's the way we're gonna run it. Because if we can't have some consistency, then there's no use in making people jump through hoops. Establish clear and objective design standards. Right now, anybody can build anything that they want, anything what looks any way they want in these commercial areas without any input from the city. And you might say, well, that's great, that's what it should be. Well, the challenge becomes, all of a sudden people are putting solid brick walls along the streets because they put their parking in the back, or they put the parking in the front, and and you end up with a really ugly square box instead of something that at least has some sort of topography and looks nice. Because all of us want, even our commercial areas, to look nice. So we're trying to figure out how to come up with objective design standards, support improved transit accessibility, which again, you're back to the more the chicken and the egg. You get more transit, the more customers you have. Same with businesses. You get more businesses, the more people you have. And you're trying to figure out how do we bring both into an area. And then coming up with supply and affordability, and then working with the other tools that we have as a city to try to encourage good growth. So, go ahead. All right. So, and everybody likes to hate on the word density, but as I said, we could double the density in Linden and not build another building. And in many areas throughout the city, we could do the same thing because we have buildings that are either vacant or severely underutilized, and smaller households that we do. But part of that brings us more transit and more ability to get around. And, you know, for older populations or folks that need accessibility, that becomes a challenge getting around, you know, if they can't get public transit. Yes, ma'am.
With this all coming together like it is, I want you to look around you. Do you see a lot of these people walking and riding a bike to shop? I mean, it's not going
So, this is one picture that is an example that I'm using. And for 222 square miles of city. So, if you're thinking that this is what I want.
Being a sanctuary city has anything to do with your.
You gotta let the guy talk. You gotta let him talk.
So,
We will have questions and answers at the end of the meeting. Let's get through the presentation, and then we will have questions and answers. Okay, folks. Sir. Okay. I brought up repeatedly the decorum policy. If anybody violates it, from here on out, you'll be asked to leave. Period. This is, first and foremost, the Heritage Free Will Baptist Church. We are in a church building. I expect people to behave as such, and if you can't, there's the door, leave. We will have a question and answer period, but it will be conducted respectfully. Not screaming, not yelling, not interrupting the speaker. If you can't abide by that, I will ask you to please get up right now and leave. Sir, please leave. Sir, please leave. Sir, please leave. I'm asking you to leave, sir. Sir, please leave. Sir, you have been asked to leave. It may be your home, but you're not going to behave that way in this church building. Please leave. Have a good evening.
Everybody else. There's the truth.
Okay, let me explain this to anybody that is not understanding this. Okay? We are guests of this building. The pastor personally spoke to me. Personally. And I have deacons of this church in the room, and I have the treasurer of the church in this room tonight. If we cannot conduct ourselves in an appropriate manner, we will not be meeting in this location anymore. Do I make myself? That's not me making this rule. That's the church. It's their building. They have the right to invite us or uninvite us. We should be respectful of the fact that they allow us to use this building for free. They have never asked us for 25 cents to meet here for all the years we have been here. We can agree to disagree with the city. And Mr. Celebrezzi, I'm going to look you in the face. You and I have not always agreed on everything. Would that be a fair statement?
that's more than accurate.
Have I ever cursed you out? We have disagreements all the time, but we keep them respectful. And I'm asking everybody in this room to please be mindful of the fact that we are in a church and a church building, and we are guests here. The Scioto Southland Civic Association does not own this building. Please, let's be respectful of the fact of who does own this building. Thank you.
again, you know, I have to figure out how to get my point across, and I've got limited space on there. And the idea of that building that I showed you was not because I want it down here. The idea was to use it as an example of a building that where it is makes sense, and people wanted it there, but they had to spend and fight for a year plus to get through our city's regulations. And that's what the zoning code change is trying to do, trying to make it so that this process, while still reviewing it and making sure that people are building and doing the right thing in our neighborhoods, is quicker, more efficient. You know, that's one of the things, you know, I take great pride in our department. We move fast. When we find a problem, you know, we review building plans every day. We've got code enforcement. We make things, our goal is to get things done quickly and not drag it out. That's why when Bruce called me after the previous meeting, I said, let's schedule another meeting the following Monday. I will be there. There's no reason to let people in. He said, no, we're gonna do it on the 4th. I said, tell me when and where to be. And he said, be here at 6 o'clock. And I'm here with my staff because I don't believe in dragging this crap out. I hate it when other departments drag things out. And trust me, you talk to some other employees that I work with, I don't put up with things taking forever to get back to me. When people call me, as Bruce, I get back to them within a day, usually less. If you send me an email, you're probably gonna get a response within the hour or two. Because there's no reason that I should not be transparent to answering whatever your question is, okay? So please take some of these pictures with a grain of salt, but listen to the concepts and the ideas of what I'm trying to talk about, because I'm trying to convey, and apparently for other folks, I did not convey what my thought was on that. For that, I apologize. Bruce, let's go to the next slide. All right. So I know that a lot of people feel like, and I don't know how many people here were aware of this before last month. And I suspect there's a lot of people here that weren't aware of this. We've got 960,000 people that live in the city of Columbus. And if you ever associate with campaigns or marketing, you know you've got to touch somebody 6, 7 times before they remember what you're telling them. And that's our challenge. And like I said, we've spent a number of years going to area commission meetings, trying to work with media to get articles. We did 2 different, and I'm sorry, I'm sounding like I'm tooting my horn, but I am, because I want you guys to know what we tried to do and how we tried to make sure that we reached out to folks. Because we did 2 different surveys. The first survey had close to 4,000 people that took part in it. The last survey that actually showed pictures of ideas on different corridors based on where you plugged in you wanted to take the survey for. We had over 6,000 people take those. We also had a number of workshops throughout the city. I know the closest one here was at Barack Community Center up a little bit north of here. We had over 150 people come through there. It wasn't a person like me standing up here talking. It was all the maps, all the corridors laid out. We had different stations around talking about parking, talking about height, talking about density, talking about what can and can't be done through the zoning code. Now I will say this: at that community, that workshop, I went there. A couple came that lives on High Street. They live in a single-family home that is a zone C4. So that means their house is non-conforming, which is a pain in the butt. Since 2008, all the lending institutions now want zoning to match up with what the use is. And there's a big chapter in the code that talks about non-conformity. But in the end, it makes you have to jump through more hurdles. And they were concerned that when we rezoned, their house was going to have to get torn down and a store put there, which was a lot to unpack. So first off, with zoning, as I said earlier, you can have a use that's there legally now, and if we change the zoning there, that use is still able to continue on. We can't tell you, you gotta tear down your house and put a shop there. Quite frankly, we've got more commercial space than we need with the rise of Amazon and DoorDash and all these other delivery things that we all use. But we took that to heart from this couple because, I was like, all right, what are we gonna do? They're in these corridors. What we ended up doing is in the new draft code, which I'll talk about that here momentarily, we made it so that a single family house on any of those corridors that I showed you that wants to be built new is by right, which means you can do it without jumping through any extra hoops. And so that means that their house actually, which is non-conforming right now, if they go to sell it, they're gonna have trouble because they're gonna have to rezone it, or they're gonna have to convince their lending institution, or people that are trying to buy it, that they can still have that house even if there's a catastrophic fire or a problem. Well, we said, all right, that's too much, again, back to that permissiveness that we were talking about earlier, wanting to help people get through this. We just wrote into the new code, it's draft right now, that a single family home is allowed on one of these commercial corridors. And so, as we develop the code, trying to figure out how do we allow people to do what we're doing. When we pass this code, whatever it looks like, if that section stays in the code here this summer when we pass this, there's gonna be over 900 houses that are gonna go from non-conforming to conforming, which means they can do additions easier, they can refinance easier, they can sell easier. But none of that is anything we're gonna tell them they have to do. They can keep doing what they wanna do. That's the whole idea behind zoning is management, not direction. Yes, ma'am.
This is what I heard you say, I just want to make sure I understand you. If they want to change and add something to their home, they can.
Yes. So the question is, let me instead of repeating your question, let me walk back a little bit. So as the city developed, and we had these areas that were developed in 1920s, 1930s, the forefathers sat down and figured out the zoning code. The first zoning code we had was 1928. Most of these houses that I'm talking about were built in 1905, 1910, or 1920, before we had a zoning. And the forefathers sat down for whatever reason and said, okay, these areas are this areas that, and so be it. So they are non-conforming. But many of these places, along High Street, I got Indianola up north, a lot of these areas, these houses kept staying as residential. They either stayed as single-family homes, or there might be a 2-unit or something like that. They've been residential since the 20s, before we had the zoning code. And so there's, even though they were non-conforming for the last nearly 100 years, they weren't told they had to do anything different. Now, again, as I mentioned, in 2008, with the financial collapse, after that, for whatever reason, the banks decided they wanted the zoning to match up with what the use was. And while we've got this big chapter on non-conformity, it still meant that people had to jump through more hoops. If they wanted to add a house or add an addition, wanted to put a garage on the back, or they wanted to sell or something, or refinance. So, after this couple and a couple folks came to this thing, we said, all right, we really do need to do something. And so we ended up making this change. So in the draft language, there'll be language that will say, if you have a single family home, and there's a dozen of them running down High Street, they keep doing what they're doing. If they decide to sell, they can sell. If the house burns down, God forbid, they can rebuild just what they've got, or they can build bigger. So without having to go through, jump through extra hoops. So trying desperately to keep the hoops.
Deputy Director, if I can step in for a second, maybe this will help a little bit. I was behind the screen, so I couldn't see. Who asked the question? It was someone over here. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example right quick. And Deputy Director, I had actually emailed this property to you, and we had discussed this previously. So I'm going to give you the example, and I have it right here in my hand. I have the documents on it. Deputy Director Celebrezzi has seen this. So I, along with several people in this room, until a certain point, there are current active area commissioners in this room. So this is a property at 2139 Refugee Road, to give you an example of what he's talking about. 2139 Refugee Road in March of 2022, had to come before the Far South Columbus Area Commission. The property is here on the far south side. It is not far away from here. It has a house on it, a residential house. It is zoned M, like Mary, for manufacturing, but it has a residential house on it. The house was built in 1927, but when the city came through in 1950s, it was zoned for M manufacturing. Deputy Director Celebrezzi will tell you that M manufacturing is one of the most intensive uses under the city's zoning code. You can put some of the most objectionable things that you can imagine in an M manufacturing zone. I'm not saying anything incorrect, am I?
Accurate.
Things like chemical plants, tire recycling facilities, with some additional permitting, but very intense uses. And in fact, there are 6 houses in a row, residential, but across on the other side of Refugee Road, there are, in fact, which used to be vacant land, now industrial buildings. The owner of this house attempted to sell the property. Couldn't do it. Because the banks said, it's now M manufacturing, we won't give you a mortgage. I, at an area commission meeting, brought up to, so residents brought it up to Deputy Director Celebrezzi. I brought it up to Deputy Director Celebrezzi, and we had a very intense conversation about this. I said, when you do this corridor, we have these 900 homes on the South High Street corridor, and I brought up, and I had this document with me. This is the actual document I took to the meeting. This house eventually did sell. The people who bought it couldn't get a mortgage from a local bank here in Columbus. They had to go all the way up to a bank just outside of Toledo, Ohio. They had to get a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage, and this is a public record. I'm not breaking anybody's confidentiality. You can print it off of the internet. They had to get a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage, and they're currently paying 14.7% interest. Now, that's literally an example from 2022.
So what I heard you say is that you're proposing to help people in that situation.
Yes.
So now that you did that, at the meeting that I was at a month ago, he was saying that if these people's homes burn down or they want to make a change to it, they couldn't. So now you're saying something totally different when you're trying to change and make it better. That was the only thing I was trying to get it clear understanding of that.
Completely accurate, because under the current zoning code, under that non-conforming code that I keep referencing, if it were to burn down a certain percentage, then you would have to either rezone or build something different. I at one time owned a 12-unit apartment near our campus. Somebody decided they were gonna not put out a match and throw it in the trash and go out for the bars for the night. Well, they burned it all, huge fire, and the city came, this was 15 years ago, the city came in and said, you can rebuild that as 12 unit if you go through the variance process. And you do this, and you pay this extra fee and all that. Or you can turn it back into a 2 unit, which is what it was back in the 30s, when it was originally converted to 10 units. And so, I was stuck. In this case, my brother and I decided to sell and just walk away. But that's the situation where you got something, you buy it, you think it's all good to go, something catastrophic happens, and all of a sudden the city code that totally unaware of says, no, you can't do that again. You gotta jump through all these hoops to get there. Under the new code, the draft proposal that we're finishing up, and I'll walk through that here in a second. You could do that. I would have been able to rebuild that 12 unit without having to go through anything short of wrestling with the insurance company. So, yes, ma'am.
And I want to answer your question in two things. I did say that, and in that same conversation, I said 2 things. Full disclosure. Number 1, at the time that I posted the meeting notice, and Deputy Director, correct me if I'm wrong, you and I had a conversation that when I started posting the meeting notices, I was unaware To a point, you called me and said that there was a change made, and prior to that change being made, I was unaware that the change had been made.
Yes.
Secondly, I had not seen any of the draft language that he is talking about, and I made the statement, and until I see the draft language, I'm going with what I have that I can touch, feel, and I've had 4 real estate attorneys, 2 of whom who teach real estate at Ohio State, who have told me that because they haven't seen any of this draft language, they're going with what's on the books right now.
So I just wanted him to make
Mhm.
it clear after that. It was very clear. The second time you said it, the first time you sort of went through it pretty fast for me. Okay.
I do that.
I just wanted to be more clear.
Definitely. So, you're exactly right. And I would not, you don't have to take my word for it. When we put the language out there, feel free to read through it. I can find the reference and point people to it. So, and one of the things we tried to do, and then I'll wrap up here so we can take questions. Government has a really good knack of coming to you and saying, here's the cake. What kind of frosting do you want on it? As opposed to what we really tried with our surveys and stuff, is that we're gonna bake a cake. Tell us what we need to be in it. And that was some of these things like this couple that talked to us. A number of other changes have, found their way in because we did a lot of these workshops and surveys before we actually started writing the code. Now, like I said, government tends to go, here's the code, what do you think? And that's, if you get the feeling that they're checking a box, that they came out and asked you what you thought about it. Instead, we really tried to grab on to what folks were concerned about, what they wanted along these commercial corridors, how they wanted them to develop. And we hopefully we succeeded. So, right now, we are wrapping up the draft language. We've got a number of areas we still need to finish up and get decisions made from people higher up than myself. And once we have that, early April is when we're gonna release that code, that new draft code for that 143 roughly miles of corridors. We'll have a map that will show you exactly which parcels are impacted by that. And that, like I said, that will be first week or 2 of April. And then we're gonna have 60 days of comments. So for 2 months, folks can comment and tell us what they think we got wrong, or what they think we got right, or what we missed. And then we've got to take that back, distill that, figure out, can we do something, what change do we need to make? And then it'll go to council, for them, they're gonna hold 2 hearings on this, and then their goal is to pass this sometime this summer. Our challenge is just trying to get all of these details figured out, because, and I gotta admit, I learned a whole lot more. I'm not a planner by trade. A lot of the folks I'm working with are planners, and there's all kinds of little nuances that I missed. So, but I hopefully are confident. So, real quick, like I said, we'll be going around to all the area commissions. Next to our building on Front Street by City Hall, there's going to be a gallery that you can go there and talk to some of our planners, some of our staff, see maps and all that type of thing, free parking. We got the comment period. If you email me, I can give you the email address or the website that you can go on. Just Google Columbus zoning code. It'll come up with this website. We've got a number of short presentations on there to go into things more in depth. At this point, let me move on. I'll take some questions. I'm going to let Bruce tell me how we're going to run that, and I will do my very best to answer every question here before we leave.
So, I'm going to take this away from my face because I turned up the microphone a little bit, Deputy Director. So I'm going to show you a document, Deputy Director, that has caused a lot of concern amongst residents. And I just want you to touch on it briefly because it was used in a meeting, and It is from August 2nd. And then we're going to take questions at the microphone in the center of the room. That microphone is live because everybody can hear. So this is a document that is no longer available on the Zone-In website anywhere. But it was used at the Bragg Center at that meeting. And it was distributed to some of our residents here on the far south side. And they were told by staff that many of these categories that I have displayed on the screen, and I'm going to try to zoom in on a little bit because I had to scan this document because it is not on the website anymore, that many of these types of buildings will be in the South High corridor specifically. And many of them, as the categories, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, say that they're up to 12 stories in height. And the overall comment of people who wrote notes at that meeting were that the corridor along South High is going to look like either the Short North or the campus neighborhood. Can you address that comment? And that was from city staff. I did not agree, so I relayed that.
Okay, so first off, I know we're not in the Short North, we're not on campus, we're the far south, right? So, what I told you earlier that C4 district is the same thing throughout the whole city, no matter whether it's down here, Bethel Road, Sunbury Road, Cleveland Avenue. And so we had to break up these areas because there's different types of areas. You've got your large areas like the shopping center, the Great Southern Shopping Center, that would fall under a regional activity center, which is a large parcel that has the capacity to have larger buildings on it. And please remember, we're not talking about the neighborhoods where you and I live. We're not talking about where our single-family homes are. These are large commercial areas. So you've got these large areas like shopping centers. Then you've got areas that are, sorry, I'll get off people's way here. You've got what are called the throughways. You've got the areas along High Street where it's only one parcel deep, and is basically, right after that is our residential homes. Well, those are not going to have 12-story buildings on them. They're going to be something different, and part of the reason why this was taken down is some of this has changed. And again, we need, once we release the map and the new code, we'll have an updated one. But on those corridors, along the corridor that's just one parcel deep, you could do 3 or 4 stories and it doesn't impact the neighborhoods. But you get down to an area that is like what we call a business node, say like Williams Road and South High, where there's more commercial activity because you've got 2 major thoroughfares coming together, you got bus lines, that might be a little bit bigger. That's not going to be 12 stories like, say, a large shopping center area might, but it's going to be more dense. So, there's 5 up here. I believe the final count, we ended up with 8 new districts that are more accustomed to where these parcels are. Because again, we've got some parcels that are 50 feet deep along Sullivan Avenue or along Parsons and areas. And those aren't going to take a giant building. They might take the coffee shop, or they might take a 4-unit apartment building. Then you get to areas that are more commercial, like the shopping centers, like the business nodes where 2 major areas come together, and you've got a lot more activity, you've got larger parcels, which can handle, without impacting neighboring parcels, larger buildings. So, and don't let the name urban confuse you, okay? That's just what the planners use for whatever reason. We're all a big city here, so we are an urban city, but we have different types of neighborhoods within our city. We're trying to respect those and yet still allow these commercial areas to thrive, which then give us more businesses, give us more options to go on. All right, so that was a very long way. Bruce, do you have another question? Or do you want to take questions?
So what we're going to do is we're going to, as folks are able, line up at the microphone over here. If we have folks up in the front of the room, so folks, if you want to go to the microphone in the back, in the center aisle, we will have folks ask questions from there.
First of all, Bruce, I want to thank you for everything that you have done, and I really appreciate seeing everybody come out. The next question is probably not for you, but maybe you can help us. These places that may come in get tax abatement. Can we get that? No, don't laugh. I'm serious.
So I know that Department of Development has expanded what's called the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA, to allow a lot more of the city if people want to reinvest or want to redevelop, and you can apply for that. I had a friend of mine that called me and said, how do I get into it? I gave him the contact person up in Department of Development, and so if somebody's interested in
But
it.
if you're looking out for that company that's coming in and you're giving them a tax abatement, what about us who've been here and have paid taxes our whole life to the south side, to Columbus? That's not fair to us.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. I don't work for Department of Development.
I know you don't, but if you can help us with that.
Tax abatements are a tool that unfortunately, because I hate them personally, and that's not the city speaking, that's my own personal opinion. But a couple things play into it. Right now, because we don't have enough skilled tradespeople to do the building, and we have so much building going on, even though we're still behind on the units, it doesn't make financial sense for a lot of the developments to occur without some of these abatements. And that's all Department of Development. I can get you in touch with the folks there. So, but it's also not just for the big Casto and wagon runner. It's for the smaller guys. We have a number of small developers on our zoning advisory committee, and they've gotten tax abatements for their 4 and 6 units and for redeveloping some houses.
Now, the other question is to everybody else here. They had a problem with the slide that was up here. Hey, change is coming. But if we look around in this room and we see everybody in here, a lot of us ain't gonna be here in a little bit. So younger people are coming in. If the change is gonna happen no matter what, why can't we look forward to what's best for our kids or grandkids or great-grandkids?
Folks, so there's been a request, we're going to get back to the questions and answers. There's been a request from several people in the room. I want you to take a look at the screen. So this is the current map. Now, Deputy Director, you mentioned that the map is going to be updated. So as the questions and answers are being given, I am going to scroll. So this is State Route 104. But this is the Rice Bowl property right here, which is currently being redeveloped. I am going to scroll down. The current corridor is everything in the blue. That being said, eventually every single property citywide, when this whole project is done, will be rezoned. Fair statement. It's not going to take overnight. It's going to take years.
We're probably going to be back out here talking in 2 years. Because it's going to take, we've got to start from scratch again when we decide to do the residential areas to figure out what people are interested in. So, I'm going to go ahead and take another question real quick.
Right here. Ladies on the mic.
Bruce, there's some people asking to scroll it down. When I said change by about 50 parcels, I'm talking about all 143 miles of it. We've got 12,000 parcels that are in the 143 miles, 800, 900 parcels in this area along South High Street. Yes,
Mr. Celebrezzi,
yes, ma'am.
I have a question. You mentioned up front about asking area commissions to participate in this program. I was a former area commissioner up until 9 o'clock this morning in this area when I resigned. Why, and this question was asked at a November meeting of area commissioners by Mr. Robert Patterson, and I was present. He asked why wasn't our commission that represents down here represented at the table when you did this project? We have no say.
So, there are 21 civic area commissions throughout the city. There are close to a dozen there are 21 area commissions throughout the city, and there's close to a dozen major civic organizations that act like area commissions. And when I say that, those are the groups that hear variances. When you want to get a variance or rezone, you've got to go to that local civic group or that local area commission to get a recommendation from them to take that to council. And so we started, like I said earlier, 3 years ago. My first meeting with Far South was a Zoom call because of COVID. I then did multiple presentations there. We've also done tried to do as much outreach. And if folks didn't hear about it, I don't know what to say. I will have to figure out how we can do it better for the next phase when we deal with the neighborhoods. But Bruce, I think you're being asked
Okay, so I'm sorry, I was behind the screen trying to scroll this down. The screen blocked the question. Someone over here was asking a question. If you could kindly repeat it. Who was asking the question?
The lady who said she resigned today because we did not have proper representatives at the other meeting. She asked why. He responded that he has no idea why. He'll do a better job of trying to make sure you guys do your job.
Correct. I also resigned at 9 a.m. this morning as a Far South Columbus Area Commissioner.
Obviously, you're not doing your job.
So, would you like, this is my opinion. Would you like my opinion? The chairperson of the Far South Columbus Area Commission let me back up. The Far South Columbus Area Commission was supposed to hold elections at their January meeting per their bylaws, which are on their website. They did not. So as of this moment, and this is my opinion, and this is, no, just please let me finish, okay? This is my opinion, and this is an outside attorney's opinion. They are operating illegally as of this moment because they did not hold elections in January. They then canceled their February meeting, so when they had their March meeting, when the chairperson that was in the chair seat opens the meeting for the March meeting, which will be held this Thursday at the Scioto Southland Recreation Center at 6 p.m. They have no illegal officers. The chairperson, the vice chairperson, and the treasurer have not been elected. So, they have to figure out how to fix that problem and get proper officers in to go forward. As far as community representation goes and having the meetings, and this again is my opinion, Mr. Celebrezzi said that they had a meeting with about 150 people in the room at the Brack Center, and they had about a 1% response, because I did the math in my head. There's about 900,000 people in the city, and they had about a 1% response. The purpose of this meeting tonight, the purpose of the meeting last month was to try to get community engagement. And I stood in the front of the room and I said that we need to be more active. We need to go to the Far South Columbus Area Commission meetings. We need to go to the meetings that City Council is having. We need to go to these public hearings, and not me. This ain't about me, this is about you. Go speak at these meetings and let them know what you think. Hang on for a second.
Sit down.
One moment. So this question, what this man is saying is he happens to be an area commissioner. He asked this very same question that you asked about 6 months ago.
Why was he speaking
I asked this question over 6 months ago, Bella, when y'all first set up that little committee that y'all call yourself, said no. Why couldn't someone from, look at all these people, from the south side be represented on there? I live on Mary Franklin, but all these people, half of them live over here. You didn't have no one from this side of town on that committee. And I know what he's saying, what happened a month ago or something. But I asked you this over 6 months ago. For somebody, I asked you could not get on it. That's before my wife died, I asked you could not get on it. You didn't answer, you didn't say nothing, or you didn't let nobody, y'all had meetings, but you didn't have no one from, I got a ticket that said 354 people from over here right now. Don't you think they needed a representative?
What's the answer, Mr. Calabrese? Why didn't this area have representation on the committee?
So we had an advisory committee that we assembled that we had 17 people put on there. Larger than that is unmanageable. We had a Southside area commissioner on there who, Erin Sink, she's from Columbus Southside.
Columbus
So-
Southside, that's number 104 people.
That's not us.
That is not us.
So my neighborhood didn't have somebody on there. Far East didn't have somebody on there. So
Mr. Coleman, I hope you get a chance.
May I have the floor, please?
yes, sir.
My name's Bill Palmer. I have the floor, thank you. I've got a simple question. I've been living in the South End for I'm 83, so it was 82 years. On the south side, I'd say.
Yes, sir.
But I get to the point where I was told that if my house burned down 3 years from now, I can't build it back the same way, and you're standing telling me I can. But will you change the area code to knock me out of that privilege? I'm in 07.
Okay, so under the current city code, you wouldn't be able to rebuild your house.
That's what I'm talking
Let me, not zip code, are you in one of these corridors? Are you in a C4?
No, I'm right here in the south end. I'm a mile, less than half a mile from here to
Okay,
my
so
home.
you're already in a residential zone
Yeah.
district. You rebuilt.
I'm east of Parsons Ave.
That's fine. You're a residential area, you're able to rebuild with no problem.
Well, see, I was told otherwise at times, and it was 2 or 3 years down the road, but I don't want to rebuild into an apartment in my house if it burnt down.
We're not thinking. Again, I'm dealing with the commercial corridors here.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
That thing went off, I guess.
All right, I'll have to talk up a little louder. Is
There you
that
go.
all right? Okay, so under the current zoning code, if you have a single-family home on South High Street that is zone C4, which is a commercial zoning district, if you had a fire and your house burned down more than 50%, in order to rebuild, you'd have to either rezone or get a variance.
Well, I'm
But
east of
if
Parsons.
you're in, and I suspect that you are in,
East of Parsons.
are they? Then I suspect you are in an R2 or an R2F district, which is a residential neighborhood. Your house burns down, 50% or all of it, you rebuild it. The zoning code isn't gonna make you do anything different.
Is that gonna be now or for the future?
Forever. That's why we have a residential zoning district. It says this area is single-family homes, or maybe doubles, and single family, and if there's a problem, if you burn down, you get to rebuild the same use that you did before, which was a single-family home.
Thank you.
Same thing with my house. If it burns down, I can build back up. I have issues with side yards.
But see, we're worried about places like we're gonna lose our firehouse or our training center. We're gonna end up losing that the way it looks.
No, don't forget, the zoning code does not make you do anything different than what you're doing. Okay, and the way we're adding the section in there that if you, there are, I don't know, about a dozen single-family homes on South High Street.
Yes.
If they burn down, we have we put it in the draft. Don't believe me, you'll see it here in about a month and a half, that you can rebuild. That is what's called allowed by right. So you could have a single-family home, you could have a 4-story along those corridors there.
I know that's what a lot of them want to know.
Where you live is gonna stay single-family.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, police, you say that Aaron
Yes, ma'am.
I guess I have a question. My question is, all this development and everything, do you guys plan on putting another fire department in, more police? I mean, you're doing all this development, so what are you gonna do about that?
So, we're not doing the development, we're allowing, let me finish.
Okay, a certain number of
We're creating
people.
the environment that we can have more development. With more development comes more resources like that. I can't speak to what the plans are that public safety has, but I know they have formulas and they've got the people that figure out we need our fire response time's not adequate. We need a new house. We need more police down there. That is outside of my lane. I can't speak to that. All I'm doing is I'm trying to set the stage so we have better development, more development in the south side, far south, and throughout the city. Again, it's chicken and egg. We get more people, you get more customers, you get more services.
Okay, so in other words, we just need to call the Department of Public Safety and, if this development passes and gets rezoned.
This is not a development.
Okay,
This
gets rezoned.
Right, rezone just changes what you're allowed to do there if you decide to change.
Well, but developers are going to come in, I mean.
There very well may be developers, and I guess the question becomes, what's your definition of a developer? You got Castle, you read about all the big ones in the paper, but we've got literally hundreds that I deal with on a day-to-day basis that are building single-family homes, building doubles, triples throughout the city, that I deal with every day with their building plans. So,
But they still need a fire department, they need police
we
protection.
definitely do.
And schools. Okay, that's all.
I got you. Hi, hello.
Go for it.
Oh my goodness. The microphone's kind of tall. Hi, I'm Kelsey. I just need you to relate to me for a second. I've been born and raised on the south side for the past 27 years, I'm right there on Parsons Avenue. My mom, she went to Mary Franklin, just like me, go Red Devils. But, but back in 2013, she passed away from a rare kidney cancer. And we went to the doctors, we tried to figure everything out. No one could figure out why my mom had cancer. First person in my entire family to ever have cancer. What we found out, it was because of the dioxins that was being puffed into the air from the smokestacks that used to be at Berliner Park. So my question, which kind of sums everything up just a little bit, are we going to add more waste to energy incinerators to continue to pump out these dioxins that are literally killing people? Like, are we going to continue to do this? Because just sitting down here, going through our lovely Google Maps, we got over 10 dumps in a 5-mile radius. Like, we're killing people. Like, we're not just killing ourselves, but we're killing our generations.
That's why the poor are being put down here.
So are we going to continue to move all these people down here just to kill them off more? Like, what are we doing? Are we protecting the air?
So we are not dealing with, in this project, manufacturing districts. That is a very different piece. All those facilities that you're talking about are zone manufacturing. We are just dealing with commercial corridors because I don't have the ability I do have the ability to potentially try to rezone them. But again, as I said earlier, I can rezone them to residential. But until they decide to do something different or have a catastrophic issue, they can keep doing what they're doing as far as their use. The whole health aspect of it is way out of my league as far as understanding the details of it. We got Department of Health, we got US and Ohio EPA, and I understand what you're saying. I've had plenty of people
Call me to talk to me about what's going on, because we also now we had to pick up on, they just gave us noise ordinance, part of the noise ordinance now, so I've got to contend with that by the end of the year. But all of these health issues is well beyond Department of Building and Zoning Services.
Well, absolutely, that's why it's covered by the EPA, but the thing is, it's already been rectified legally. Back in the late 1990s, when it first came out and people started dying from the rare kidney cancers, they already had a lawsuit. But my family isn't protected because we have surpassed that time. My family can't be protected because of that. But we keep tearing down these incineration facilities and digging up all these graveyards and stuff and building on top of it, and that only adds to the air pollution. And that, if you know about air pollution, that only increases the CO2 intake into the environment. And so with all of that, it's taking a lot. It's taking a toll on us. So is all of this going to be passed through the EPA? Like, are we going to get any type of notice about it? Because, like I said, there's over 10 landfills and dumps in the Farmer radius.
So again, the zoning that we put regulates the use. And if somebody's doing something outside of it, and again, we're dealing with commercial operations. We're not dealing with land or with auto salvage yards or anything that's zoned manufacturing that is not part of this project.
Incinerators commercial use though?
Those are noxious uses that fall into the manufacturing zoning district, and in the code there is a level of protection and distances and buffers. Unfortunately, as I said, we've got areas, including the old Marion Township down here, that developed 100 years ago when people didn't understand or didn't care of what these things were doing to them. They were living next to these places because that's where they worked, that's where their jobs were. So part of what we're trying to do is trying to provide whatever level of protection we can through the zoning code. There's a lot of other government entities that are part of that, and I can't speak much more than that.
Okay, all right, well, to segue into my second question, my apologies. We all got questions. Where are we going to shop? Y'all taking up to Walmart? I gotta go to the city. It's a lot.
The buses don't run.
Yeah, the buses don't run to Grove City. How am I supposed to get my groceries?
I guarantee you that the large areas, especially the Great Southern Shopping Center and other areas, are still going to be around. This is not going to supplant
But they took out Walmart though.
Pardon?
They took out Walmart. That's what I'm trying to get at. Walmart's gone. Kroger's next. So where are we shopping?
We had nothing to do with that whatsoever. Nobody on my team.
But you just said you work with the commercial zoning, and Walmart and Kroger and all that in the Great Southern Shopping District is commercial.
We are changing commercial zoning. I don't go and talk to each business. This is a large-scale zoning throughout the whole city that includes 12,000 parcels. When we did our mailing, we had to mail to 80,000 people that we were doing this about a year ago. So if a business decides to move out for whatever reason, that's got nothing to do with something we're doing. We are trying to make it easier for commercial operations to be there, whether it's businesses, restaurants, homes, apartments.
Okay, well, I guess my last question is, what do you want us to do? Where do we go from here? Because I can't keep driving to Grove City and back. That's why I still live in the South Side.
When we release the map and the new code here in April, tell me what you think. Tell me if what you think we're doing is right, wrong, or we need to do things differently.
Is somebody gonna let us know when this meeting is?
I'm having trouble here. There's a lot of people talking over everybody. So when you come up, ma'am, make sure I get that question. Yes, sir.
Well, I want to qualify first. The city of Columbus stopped at 104 when my folks moved down here. I walked my happy butt to St. Laz. My first job was Manch's Greenhouse. Over to Wolco and on over to Worley High School. Made my way up to the Ironworkers Hall, and that's where I've been. Own 3 properties down here. I'm coming into this a little late, not sure what's happening. Residential properties, these all could become residential apartment complexes, the one from 104 down to 270.
It could become single-family homes, it could be doubles, it could be apartment buildings, it could be businesses, it could be a coffee shop, could be a restaurant, could be a Walmart, could be a Menards, could be a Lowe's, all of that.
Anything that could be commercial could come down through there.
Correct.
Is what you're gonna allow. So Columbus does a lot of studies. How many new residencies do you think this is gonna create in your crystal ball?
Our crystal ball, as you called it, is called a capacity report. And we're actually waiting for the report to come back so we can actually provide some numbers when we release this of what potential could be. If things stay the same, or they go to half capacity, or they go to 3/4 capacity. So I don't know those numbers at this point.
Well, any amount that you produce will make our schools over capacity, our squads over capacity. We're running our squads all the way over to 104. We're going down the side of the downs. You know, these guys need to get a new house right there at Southgate, but that's another story, that's another plan.
So again, you know, as we talked about a few minutes ago, you know, Columbus City Schools, they study what is happening, where the growth trends are. Columbus Department of Public Safety, they watch what are the response times, are they too long? Where do they need to put new firehouses? How many police do we need to have down there? I can't speak to any of those details because that's not my area that I know, but there are lots of people in the city that are supposed to be experts in these things, that are supposed to stay on top of this. And when you raise those concerns to city council members, they're the ones that allocate the budget. While the mayor introduces or gives them what he'd like to see, ultimately it's council that approves the budget and the money that I'm allowed to spend.
You know, Windmiller Farm is an example of what's going to happen all the way down through here. You know, you mentioned Linden a couple times, and I think you want to make the south end of New Linden, and I'm afraid it's going to end up the new Westgate if we allow all this development to come through.
Well, it can't be the new Westgate because Westgate's not in the city of Columbus. I mean, if you're gonna go to these extremes, I'm gonna push back also. So I don't want to change you into Linden. You all are the far south. And that's what you want to stay, and that's why I'm here tonight answering as many questions as I can. That's why we continue to try to put this stuff out there, and that's why I want the feedback from you all. That's why, hopefully everybody here's got one of my business cards. If you didn't, raise your hand, and we'll make sure you get one. So, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Just don't need a zillion apartments.
Yes, Kathy Cooper, resident of the south side for 44 years. 11 years on the west side of High Street, 33 years on the east side. This is upsetting to me also. But everybody here needs to remember, we've been dumped on a lot in the south end. This is not another trash burning power plant. Be careful of what you wish for.
Amen.
Because open land can become anything. We don't need that again. This is progress for our part of town. But my question for you is the infrastructure. High Street, the side streets.
Yeah.
Probably 95% of our side streets is 2 lanes off of South High Street. Is the expansion going to come to handle the flow of the traffic?
So when,
The other thing is, my current location, I've been there 33 years. I can't get a street sign. Mine is an original city one that the only way you can read it is if I get on a ladder and paint it. Too old for that now. All the rest of them on the avenues, the alphabet avenues, there's something different. The fire department can't read them. So should they just look for the flames? Is the infrastructure going to be corrected?
I was going to ask you if it was the alphabet streets, because I've been down there, because some folks brought it up to me, and I went down there and saw it. I called up interim director right now for public service, Kelly, who used to be my boss, and said, what's going on? I've tried to push her to do stuff. I hate to push the buck. I don't like it because I like to be able to come up with an answer for you. I don't have an answer. It's public service is the one that deals with street signs. if you send me an email, I will raise it and I will poke her again and see if we can get some answers for it. There was some rational reason supposedly, but I don't remember it. I apologize for not remembering. Bruce may have it.
You live on the Alphabet Streets, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me give a little bit of help to the Deputy Director. 2 years ago, the Far South Columbus Area Commission did a bus tour with members of City Council. They literally were on a minibus, and City Council President Shannon Harden was on the bus with a few area commissioners, and one of the places that he was taken by was the Alphabet Streets, and he literally said, "Stop the bus, I want to get off, I want to see what this mess is." And what he was referring to was not your homes. He was referring to, it was pointed out to him that for years the residents of the Alphabet Streets off of Hylock, for those that don't know, I've heard right from a lot of folks, have been neglected horribly in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that many of the residents on the Alphabet Streets have to take their garbage out to Hylock because the city garbage trucks won't go down because the potholes are so big, because the city doesn't maintain the streets, that they have to take their trash down to Hylock to get it picked up. That the city fire department, Ladder 22 went down there on a call and broke an axle, and Ladder 22 has been in the repair shop, and I wish the man from the fire department was still here, but it's been in the repair shop waiting for parts for 2 years, and they're using a spare ladder truck.
God's honest truth.
Because they hit such a large pothole, they snapped the axle on the ladder truck in half. And City Council President Harden, and I have the email, promised 2 years ago that that was going to be fixed. In turn, it went to the sign shop, and then it was reviewed by the city attorney's office, and there is some legal impediment that came up when the city attorney's office reviewed it that has to do with something with Franklin County, and I am not an attorney, and I'm not going to stand here and say that I played one on TV, but being said, there is some kind of legal impediment between the city of Columbus and Franklin County about how the deeds were recorded for the Alphabet Streets, and they are fighting it out to figure out who actually has to pay for those signs. That is what I was told literally a month ago, if that helps you understand it. It doesn't make it right. I am not going to stand here and look you in the eye and say that that's right. I just at least want to give you an honest answer as I understand it. I, as the president of the Civic Association, am continuing to keep my foot on the gas to get you folks a proper answer, to get you proper street maintenance, and to get you those signs. Because I think it's ridiculous that 2 o'clock in the morning, the fire department doesn't know which street to go on because they are looking at signs that they can't read. And I've talked to members of the fire department, I've talked to members of the police department, and literally they're out there with flashlights trying to figure out where the heck to go, and I think that that's an absolute criminal thing to be doing. So does that at least give you I'm going to tell you an honest answer whether it's what you want to hear or not. I'm at least going to give you what I know is the truth.
I feel your pain. I've been going through for 33 years. The avenues are private property.
Right.
We own to the middle of the avenue. We are required to maintain that. I have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in 33 years maintaining it. Got tagged by the city last month because there's some small ones at the back of my property. On F Avenue? On F Avenue. I fixed them, but, I have a short portion where I live. My property's long. So I have to maintain that entire property for one other home further down. Where is that right? But I feel your pain, been through for 33 years. My second part of the question, infrastructure. It's all 2-lane roads. Where's the land going to come from to make any of that better?
When part of the process that we go through when someone decides or wants to build a larger 4-story, 5-story, multiple unit is a traffic study to try to figure out how the traffic's going to run. You know, when I first, in my area, I don't know if you all remember, at Second and High, there used to be a White Castle, and this huge parking lot. I live right down the street in Harrison West. And my kids went to school, so I used to walk them past there. And we had the variance because Bohr and White Castle wanted to put 114 units there. And I got concerned. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be supportive of this, but wait a minute, what about traffic? And you know, one day, my unhappiness of my kids, I stopped us for about 5 minutes to watch the traffic to figure out how busy it is. And the challenge becomes trying to understand when people are coming and going. And you know, in apartment buildings, not everybody goes to work at the same time. Not everybody goes to work. People on vacation, people working from home now, people sick. It is a challenge to understand where the traffic's going to go. And that's why, you know, there are a lot of people smarter in that area than I am. And we've got to rely on people that are supposed to be experts in this, that study it and determine it. Is traffic going to get a little worse? It very well could. But at the same time, we've been accustomed to being able to fly down the street at 35, 45, 50 miles an hour to get where we want to go. Part of the challenge with that is you hit somebody, they're dead. You know, we took, and again, I apologize for non-far south examples, but I have to go with the examples I know. The city public service took Summit Street and North 4th that goes through campus area. There used to be 4 lanes and people would whiz down there like a freeway. They cut it down to 2 lanes, they put a bike lane in and parking, and people slowed down. It does add a minute or 2 to get to downtown, but at the same time, it dropped the accident rate significantly because you have more time to react. People have more time to react. Now, there are other streets in the city that the speed limit is higher because they are a thoroughfare that's supposed to get you from one area to another. So we've got to look at all of those. Not every side street going east-west is going to be carrying the same amount of traffic. I suspect that some of the streets like Parsons, there's already dedicated right away that the city has asked for and taken. Don't even get me started on that. I don't. That's public service again, and I apologize for not being able to have a good comment on that. But that's what will happen. We can't build the infrastructure until we have people there. Once you have people, that's when, I hate to say that, some of the attention gets added to you. Sewer systems. There's a lot of different levers that utilities can pull to adjust how our sewer systems drain. To ensure that you don't have stuff backing up in your basement. There was an area up in Clintonville that was over capacity, and this is about 10 years ago, or about 9 years ago. They ended up pumping their sewage underneath 71 into the sewer grid that's over in Linden because there was capacity there. There's a lot of people that are engineering degrees that should know how to figure out how much capacity we need. We're not going to approve because utilities and public service are part of the review plan. When somebody wants to build something, they've got to sit down with those folks too. It's all part of our process that we manage. So can I say it's going to be perfect? Not a chance. Can I say it's good? Yeah. And the people that are doing it, they care. They care about doing a good job.
Another one of your comments was about water runoff and room for it to run. In my 33 years, I've paid for water runoff of my property. Never had a water bill, but I paid that. My water runs to my street and to the culvert, which floods at the end of my street. If we have all this structure going in, all this blacktop, all this cement, it's just going to get worse. Are we going to get adequate sewer systems, storm sewer systems, to combat our problems?
I would say yes, because that's common sense. Again, I apologize for not being public service, or utilities, I'm sorry, they're sewers and drains. We can, Bruce, is it Shannon Harden, the city councilor down here? Well, okay, so, I would engage your council member, because when they call over, they've got a contact. Like anything that has to do with building or zoning, they call me, and then I go find out the answer. Same thing with utilities and service. And that's where you'll get your answer.
So a couple quick points. Number one, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla, and there's a handout on the front table that lists all our council members. She is our council member for this area. Her legislative aide and the phone number and the email is on there. The second thing, how many people in this room are aware that, so if you're coming south on Parsons Avenue, you have the Parsons Veterinary Clinic, you have Haar's Auto Glass, and you have the Gorman Truck Body Shop. And then there's a mobile home court, and I believe it's called Parsons Mobile Home Court. Directly behind Parsons Mobile Home Court, and it runs all the way over almost to about a block and a half, 2 blocks in, it's Landers. The city of Columbus built what I like to call affectionately Lake Landers within the last year. So, I've heard comments, mosquito heaven, etc. So that's a giant retention pond that was placed in our neighborhood. It created a lot of controversy. That's one of the areas, to answer your question, that the runoff is supposed to go in along with the runoff of several other neighborhoods. The city already owned the land. I don't want you directing this to the deputy director because it's not his department, so please don't tar and feather him over it. It's a totally different department. Because the city already owned the land, they were able to build this project. The first that the neighbors knew about it, and I've had conversations with Deputy Director Borntrager over at Sewer and Drains about this. Long story short, the first neighbors in that neighborhood knew about it was the contractors, the subcontractors were there building it, and they told them literally, this is going to be a park because I've seen the flyers that were put on their doors. I have them in my possession, and they told them they were going to be able to put boats and canoe on it. I literally have the flyer that says this. Later on, that contractor's employees were disciplined, but that's part of this infrastructure that you were talking about, is that there have been changes made to accommodate some of this runoff.
Yeah. But there's nothing from my property to there to handle runoff. Because it floods my
They've
street.
tied some of the existing structure into it.
It's right there with Stockbridge Park.
Yes.
Has anybody seen that lately? Thank you.
I will say this, when you have an existing commercial development rebuild or do something different or whatever, they rebuild or whatnot, Sewers and Drains tends to have them put holding tanks under the parking lots so that when you have the big downpours, the rain rushes in there and then it's released slowly into the system. And so there is regular efforts made every time. We just don't let them go blacktop everything new. So, sorry, ma'am.
Probably a few questions for you. First one was from the first question that I asked you before, and you had regarded it as it going to the picture. And it was riding a bike or people walking or taking a bus to these new places that we're supposed to get. Like I said, look around you. Do you see how these people can get around by riding a bike or walking? You're in a middle-class neighborhood. And it's an older, I mean, there is new kids coming in into some of the rentals of the houses, but it is an older generation. I've been on Parsons Avenue. I've lived 2 doors down from the same house I grew up in. Been there 60 years almost. And for this to come about, okay, there's another question. Why are you taking the South Drive-In for? Yeah. South Drive-In's been a staple on the south side forever. 2, heard rumor that Parsons Elementary School may be closed again. I mean, what? So with all of this stuff.
Let me, there's about 4 or 5 questions there, real quick. So, again, I'm using a single slide to try to represent parts of the city. Who's to say that you can't ride a bicycle? There's a lot, I'm just saying it, never say never. But you just point out there's a lot of younger folks moving in here that want to come. They want to live where they grew up. They want to be near their families. And with house prices right now, it's near impossible for a lot of them to move into their old neighborhoods that they grew up. As far as that, it's an attempt to make sure that there's mobility for different folks that want to do it. The more people you have, the more CODA service you have. And there's a lot of people in our city that rely on CODA, young and old, able-bodied and not, rely on CODA to get around, from their doctor's appointments to their shopping. So if we can bring more units in, it makes it more profitable for CODA to do it. What was the third piece that you said?
The school and the drive-in.
You gotta talk to Columbus City Schools about that. I will say this, one of the things that we did with the map here recently was there's a number of school properties on these corridors, and they jut well into the neighborhoods by 2 or 3 blocks because of the buildings, parking lot, and the stadiums or whatnot, or the track and field. We took all of those out because they're never gonna get developed without going through a huge process. The Ohio Revised Code at the state level has a huge process by which a city school sells off property. They can close it all they want, but to sell that property, the state regulates that. So we just took those all the way out because, again, they were jutting 2 blocks into the neighborhood, and that was not what our goal was here. So I can't speak.
South Drive-In backs right up to Parsons Elementary School.
I'm not telling South Drive-In they could go, stay, or do anything. I'm just dealing with the zoning for it. So
are you saying you're not closing down the South Drive-In?
The city has got nothing to do with their business decisions.
Gotcha.
So. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, earlier you said that, this is the first part of the rezoning, but then you'll come back in residential. What exactly does that mean? Because I've heard too, over in the alphabet letter streets, that there's parcels being bought up too right by each other, and I think you said earlier there was an option for apartments or whatever. So with our rezoning of our neighborhoods, is that gonna try and push us out so there could be more apartments put there? Or what exactly does that mean when you come back and do the rezoning for that?
It means I've got to come talk to you, find out what your thoughts are about what we need to do in the neighborhood. I have no preconceived notion about what we want to do because I
think a lot of us, we want to stay in our homes that we've
And again, I don't, this effort or even that effort is not going to change. If you live in your single family home, you can keep doing that. You can keep doing that. If you choose to sell to an investor because they offer you a great price, that's your decision, not the city's decision. I do know that Councilmember Faber and Councilmember Barroso Padilla, they are talking about legislation that would regulate out-of-state buyers, out-of-state investors. That's well out of my category, well out of my group.
So the second part of your question I'd like to address, if you don't mind. So I have a brand new printout that I don't have sorted to be able to put on the screen tonight. If, when you leave, you give me your email, and I have a couple of other people in the room that have asked for this, please forgive me. I'm one person, and I just very bluntly ran out of time. I have been working with a few people going back several months. I started contacting the city because I became aware of a large number of parcels off of Hylock that have been sold recently for ridiculous prices. Landlocked parcels, and they all trace back to a company called BlackRock out of Texas.
Out-of-state investors.
Yes, but I have an updated report for you. So, there's about 90 parcels that are mostly landlocked. In other words, these are parcels that don't have a building on them. They're landlocked, meaning they have other parcels around them that have quietly been bought up over the last 24 months. And I will give you an example of one piece of land. It's less than 1/3 of an acre, and it's sold for over $181,000. And they have accumulated them. So I went and had a meeting with the Franklin County Recorder's Office, because now what's happening with these parcels, and this has nothing to do with the zoning. This has everything to do with us as a civic association knowing what's going on in our neighborhood, to try to look at, the city has made comments that out-of-state investors are driving up property values. the city has made comments that they are holding properties and amassing, and that's what in this particular case, what they're doing is they're stitching together a bunch of small pieces of property to then combine them into one big piece and probably build something on it. There's nothing illegal about that, let's be clear. But when you take 90 some odd small pieces and you make one great big parcel out of it, what's going to go there? And again, there's nothing illegal about that. But we as residents here, as renters, as homeowners, need to start asking these questions. What's up? What's going on? Because eventually something is going to go there because there's currently no buildings on any of these parcels. And somebody has spent a whole lot of money. I now have an updated report where since they bought these properties, they've transferred them to other limited liability corporations 11 times.
Wow. Sounds like Hunter Biden might have bought them.
They've moved it around from here to here to here to here to here, etc. I would like to email that report. Again, there's nothing illegal in what they're doing. But it does make you scratch your head and say, well, why is somebody suddenly coming to Columbus, Ohio from another state, buying all this land and amassing a very large lot? And all of this stuff surrounds the backside of Buckeye Middle School. And it also touches the big soybean field that's owned by the Kelly family, which, by the way, is for sale. So, it could be developed in the future, that's reading tea leaves, but we as residents need to be aware of that. And I don't think anybody in this room would disagree. Again, there's nothing illegal going on, and that is not the city putting a gun to somebody's head. These were all voluntary sales from a whole bunch of different people. They were offered a price, they accepted the price, they were extremely high prices, and these people made very good money selling their land, and that's their legal right to do. This is a free country, they can do what they want, it's an arm's length transaction. But they now have a huge block of land over there. Does that help you a little bit? And I'd be glad to share that report. Read it for yourself, take a look at it for yourself. I literally just got it from the recorder's office and the auditor's office. And hopefully that'll explain it a little bit more for you. And also I will get a copy of that. I just literally ran out of time today trying to organize all of this. And I'm sorry that I don't have it to put on the screen.
Oh, that's fine. I guess my concern is the whole when he came back and said like, we'll be back in a couple of years and rezone residential. It's just I don't want to be pushed out of my home.
When I talk about rezoning the residential, it's trying to make it more simple. The districts, it's not to change it from being a residential area. We're already taking care of the commercial. We're never going to have the quantity of commercial areas that we had 20 years ago because of the delivery systems and Amazon and all that. And again, even if we say, I'm using totally hypothetical, this is not me talking, it's just a hypothetical, but say we rezoned your place commercial, you could still be a single family home until you decide to change the use or something happens. But that's not going to happen. That's the reason why we have zoning, is so that you can keep the integrity of neighborhoods together. So I want to touch on two pieces that you touched on. All these investors use LLCs to hide who they are and limit their liability, which you probably already knew, but I want to say that. I am, and Bruce, you don't know this yet, I am working on in our department, because all these transactions, when you're building something new or renovating, all comes through my department. We are working at developing what we're calling a development tracker. That means you could plug in, we'll have the boundaries from the Far South Area Commission. You can plug that in and you get an email anytime a new application comes in within that area, so you can see what's going on. You heard me talk earlier about I'm big on transparency. This was part of my effort to ensure, right now you got to sit there and know the address and plug that address into our website, which you can do that for any address. This was proactive to push things out if you wanted. So hopefully in the next few months I can get that done with everything else we're working on.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, sir.
My question might have already gotten answered indirectly, but and I understand the conceptual of the C4, you're part of the zoning, you're not part of C4 manufacturing. However, kind of just to make a clear answer, businesses that are selling to investors do have a choice, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The zoning code does not impact who you can talk to as far as if you want to sell your parcel. But that's not for us. If they want to buy it
and they want to continue the use, they can do that. If they want to change the use, there are steps to go through that. If the new use that they want to do, if they want to do a new use there, and it's allowed, then they can do it as long as they still have to go through. Every use in every commercial building is supposed to be reported to us so that we can ensure that the use is allowed. Now again, we're talking, these areas are going to be more permissive, but they still have to register with us, because if down the road they change to something different, we need to have the records for a bunch of bureaucratic stuff that we have to deal with.
And like you said, from the strip, start to finish down, if there happens to be a non-C4 zone, they have the right to stay there until something drastic happens, then they'd have to change, is what you're saying?
Everybody on that, everybody in the corridor, whether we rezone them or not, has the ability to stay doing what they're doing and stay there. It does not say you have to move out or change your use. You can do you, and we're not going to tell you you can't.
Thank you.
Hi there, Mary Sussy, got 5 years, or 5 generations in the neighborhood at 104 on High Street, so I'm very much impacted by what's going on right now. I realize that you're here and you're just a messenger, and I don't think a lot of them realize that you're here to convince us of the changes that are coming, not necessarily get our input, because the changes are already there. It's coming, it's just a matter of us acclimating, because if it wasn't already there, then we would have a vote in this. And with that being said, I'm just going to assume that this is going to be what our change is. This is what we're looking for, what's coming. With that being said, we have 2 apartments coming in, one down by Lowe's, the other one is the affordable housing by me. If you look at the details of the one by Lowe's, they say 1-bedroom apartment, roughly 20,000, or what was it, 40,000? To get into that apartment makes it over $20 an hour for one person. Makes it pretty unrealistic for people in the South End, considering the minimum wage is only $10 an hour. That brings us to the other apartment complex, the affordable one that's only available to realistic residents here in the South End of Columbus. That starts out at $10 an hour. There are 240 apartments available once they're built. How many of the homeless people have been ran out of the rec area that is owned by the city of Columbus? Because those people are founded here in the South End. Those are the people that I would prefer having in those areas rather than developers. If we are going to have the developers in the area, what is going on with all the recs, the 27 acres, million acres, whatever, 27 acres that are behind the Great Southern Shopping Center that the city owns, that no one's speaking of, that can be used? So I guess my question is developers are going to come in as long as you guys cut the red tape. You guys are cutting the red tape. So where does that put us as far as how we're staying in our home? Right now, I don't need you to keep convincing us or to get us acclimated to the realistic future for us. I need you to tell us what the next step is and where we go once the commission votes on this right here, and how that will impact us and where we go from there. Because right now I feel like, again, you're the messenger and you're blowing a lot of smoke up our ass. We don't need to hear any of that, because that's the realistic version of it. They want to know how it's going to impact them, whether it's the sewer, the freeways, how we're going to get around, how the handicap's going to get through. We just got sidewalks recently. Now we're putting in developers. The developers are going to increase the rate of the cost of living around here, which is going to, again, take all of our elderly out of our community and bring in more rental people. My daughter is graduating college right now, and by the looks of this, she probably won't even be able to make affordable housing, maybe affordable housing. But her and her boyfriend and her child, as it stands right now, could not afford to get a home in Columbus by what you guys are offering us. So with that being said, how do we stay in our homes?
Actually,
where do we go? Where's the answer that you can give us?
The situation you described with your daughter is the exact situation we're trying to rectify.
But how is cutting the red tape, bringing the developers in, going to put my daughter into a high-rise apartment complex over
Tell me what your
retail
definition
facility?
of a developer is.
A developer, someone coming outside of our area, building something that we're not necessarily willing to accept, charging a higher amount for it because they consider it quality that we don't necessarily feel is quality.
What about somebody building a 4-unit? Are they a developer?
Yes, they're a developer, why wouldn't they be?
What about rehabbers?
If they're taking old things and redeveloping them, absolutely, they're redeveloping. If they're
Okay,
using the
so-
same home and remodeling, they're revitalizing. So why can we not do a count on what houses are available that are dilapidated, empty, not up to code, and find a way, instead of spending so many millions of dollars on a bridge for the homeless people to live on, I think we could be better used to maybe grant some of the revitalization projects.
I don't
But
know-
that's
I
not
don't know
up
about
to you
bridge.
because you're here about the red tape. So this doesn't even happen.
The red tape goes across whether it's a giant developer or somebody that's building a 2-unit or a 4-unit.
Absolutely.
The situation with the prices, yeah, they are marketing them as a luxury. There's a whole lot of marketing involved there. But at the same time, the cost to build anything in